everyone, it's Julia. I'm working on just bags and totes and pouches this week. What I've been doing is just gathering things, and as I see them, thinking, "Oh, that might make a nice something," and I put it in a pile. And so this is all my things that I'm hoping to get done in the next couple weeks. And I thought I'd share some of them with you today. Not going to go over every little detail, but I'll show you kind of my process and what I'm going to be doing, and then of course show you the end result. I do have a piece of denim here. This is a little child size jean in really good condition. I've already used part of it, but I thought this top part would make a nice bag because it's a child size is smaller, and then it's just like the perfect size for something. So I've got that. I do have a couple of the patterns included, things that I maybe started but didn't finish. You have some decorator type, almost like upholstery fabric, and just a lot of stuff. But one of the things I want to work on first are these fold over clutches. And this is from a very old quilt. And it was damaged. And so I didn't feel guilty about, like cutting it up. And I did cut um, into these little clutches, and I just think they're so cute. And I will probably do some hand stitching on these, maybe some free motion flowers or something too. I'm going to just see, and if there's any damaged pieces, I'll add like maybe a piece of lace or something on them. But one thing about these is that really poorly, I mean, they've been washed, and this is just all this batting in here is just a mess. So I am going to pick these apart. And what I thought I would do is on the quilted side, the pieced side, I'm going to use a piece of fusible fleece or fusible batting. And then on the lining side, I think this is quite thin, but I love the linings, and every one of them is a little different. They're just so cool. And but they're thinner. And so I think I might add some kind of maybe a lightweight or medium weight iron-on interfacing to those. You can see I hate to do this because this is all hand stitched, but I am going to have to take that apart and yeah, this is all hand quilted, but and get this. Some of them it's just really lumpy, and some of it just isn't nice. And so I am going to have to go take it apart, even though I hate to do it. But I'm going to just hand pick that. I'm probably just going to do that in front of the TV and do my adding my fleece and my interfacing, and then I'll be back and kind of show you where I'm at. I'm going to share with you first of all what I'm going to be putting on this. This is a fusible batting, and I'll tell you what it's called here. It is a Pellon, and it's called needle punched fusible cotton batting. And one side of it's fusible, and there's a number on here too. And I'll make sure to put all that information down below for you. I'm not sure where I purchased this. I think I just an online fabric store or quilt shop maybe. I got a whole bolt of it. And then also I'm going to be using just that this is a medium weight, heat and bond, medium weight, iron-on fusible. So that is, and I'll also link this down below, but that's what I'm going to be using on the lining side. I did get the fleece ironed on and the interfacing ironed on to the lining, and I do really like the weight of it. It just has a nice feel. This is the one that I decided to work on this week. I added this vintage trim. I did put a little flower. I just free motion stitched this on, just some scraps of fabric I had. This is layered. I did put another layer on the top of this, and then just went round and around with brown thread. And then on the back too is that piece where I had to cover that fabric that was just really thin. And this is off of a vintage, or I got it at the thrift store. And I think it was like a tabletop runner or something. And I've been just cutting pieces of it and using it in some of my projects. For the closure, first of all, too, I want to say I left the lining separate when I did my stitching on this. So all this is still separate. And for my closure, I am going with the Velcro. I bought just a whole box of these little Velcro squares. I got them at the flea market, and the whole box was $5, and there was 500 of them. So a really good price on them, and I like to use what I have, and so I'm using them, and they're very sticky. And my needle, of course, doesn't like how sticky they are. And so what I do is I just go back and forth on the fleece. You can use your pants leg too, but this fleece works really well. It really, just kind of de-sticks it a little bit. And then you still can stick it where you want it to sew it on. So I wanted to share that with you. So I've got one end through the lining. And now that lining does have that interfacing on the back. So that's quite stable, even with just the lining fabric. And then the other one goes through the fleece itself. So that's all done. Now I'm going to sew the side seams together, and I'm going to sew that bottom together, just lining everything up. Just going to leave an opening on the side. It doesn't have to be very big, 2 to 3 inches. I'm going to add some pins to this and then take this to my sewing machine, stitch it up, the side, the bottom, and then leave that opening. I'm trimming my corners, and then I'm going to be turning this right side out. I'm going to poke out the corners and then give this a good press. I'm going to make a little strap for my clutch. This is a piece of fabric that's 3 inches wide, and let me measure, by 17 inches. It has a patchwork look to it, and the colors are similar, so I thought it would work for this. And I basically just ironed it in the center and then brought both edges to the center, ironed it again. I'll be taking this to my sewing machine now and stitching both sides of this to complete that. Part of this is going to hold the D-ring, and then I will close the sides, and that little piece will be all joined in there. So that's what I'm going to do next. I did sew across the fold. That just really helps with the memory of the fold. I don't know what you say, but it does help keep it. And then I did sew my strap, cut about 1 inch off, and put the D-ring right there. I did stitch that. And now for the wristlet part of the strap, what I like to do is just put the swivel hook. This is a 3/4 inch swivel hook, and bring the bottom up to just about meet it, and then turn this under, and I'm going to stitch right here a couple of times back and forth, and that way this swivel hook stays right here, and this is nice and smooth around your wrist, and you don't have that seam around your wrist. So that's pretty much going to be it. I'm going to stitch this, and then it's just a matter of stitching my side seams, and I'm going to probably maybe stitch both of them twice, but also go back and forth a couple times right at the beginning. That is definitely going to be a stress point. And then my little clutch is done. I've got a little bit of a start on the denim bag. What I'm working with here, I found this, it's like a macrame corded belt at the thrift store. That is going to be my handle. Just thought that was really, really kind of cool. And then I have this little bit of lace that looks similar to that. I did gather the top of this lace. It was a flat lace. And then I also finished off the side seams on it. And I think I'm just going to plop it over this pocket. And then another thing I found was this, I just love this seersucker fabric. It just reminds me of a summer blouse. I don't know, it's really cool. I think I got this at the thrift store too. And it's not really sure. It's like a cut in half type of a thing. So I don't have a full 45 inch wide, but there's plenty of it. And so I think I'm going to do a pocket, and I did start the pocket too. Just put a zipper in it, and this pocket is going to hang in the back of it. So I'm not going to line it. It's just going to have a hanging zippered pocket. I'm going to have to, I haven't finished the sides on it yet, nor the bottom. I might have to cut it down slightly. So that I'm going to put aside. I did put in, just use another one of those Velcro closures. And to do this, I again unstuck it so it wasn't so sticky just by putting it on a piece of fleece. And I used my zipper foot and just pulled this aside when I was sewing this, and I just sewed on two sides of this. And then for this one, I kind of did the same thing. I used my zipper foot and I just carefully stitched around this, just moving this out of the way. And then you're not even going to see this stitching line because that is going to be buttoned. And I also have enough of this seersucker that I think the only other decoration I'm going to do on this is maybe put a little bit right here of the seersucker. And also I want to just put like a tie, just like a belt, just make a belt out of this seersucker and maybe tie it in the front. I'm going to take this to my sewing machine and I'm going to stitch the little embellishments of fabrics and lace on, and then turn it so that the right sides are together and stitch this bottom. And then I think I'm going to box the corners. Here's where I'm at. I did get all of this stitched on, and also the pocket. And this is just a hanging zippered pocket, so it just hangs freely in there. Stitched it right below the waistband. And then I also did the bottom, and I did box the corners. So that's all finished. Now for the tie, or like the belt. I just love seersucker. It's just so pretty, and it's the same on both sides. It's just a really fun fabric. What I'm going to do on this is about, I believe, 4 inches wide. Just going to fold it, and I'm going to do just a gradual point on both sides of these. Just give it a little bit of detail on the end. Just going to fold it so I can cut this and the same curve. I've stitched it, turned it, pressed it, and closed the opening. Now I'm just going to put it through the belt loops and tie it in the front. The last thing is going to be the strap, and I'm just going to, underneath the belt, but just going to stitch it on both of the sides, just right on the side seam. I'm just going to go back and forth a couple times on both sides, and then I'll show you some pictures at the end. I'm on to my last little pouch that I'm going to add to this video. This is made out of a silk that was a wedding gown. I received this from just a really wonderful customer of mine in the summer. She comes up and spends some time at the lake. I think she's from California, but comes up to Minnesota and spends some time on the lake. And she had written to me and said that she had her mother's wedding gown, and basically just the skirt. She had already removed the bodice, and so she just had this silk, yards and yards of this beautiful cream colored silk fabric, and also the satin that went underneath the silk for this skirt of this wedding dress. And I thought I'm going to make her a little pouch out of it, just something special. I'm going to be using the yards of silk in different projects. I think I'm going to try to dye some because silk usually takes a really, easy dye too. So I'm just going to experiment with it. Maybe just do some, I don't know what. Like I said, I have yards and yards of it. But anyway, I'm off to this one month, and what I'm starting with here, I have a layer of the fleece or a layer of the satin underneath this silk. And then also I do have a piece of fusible fleece on the back side of that satin. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to quilt this first just by doing probably a diagonal quilt on it. And then I'm going to use a pattern that I've not ever used before, but I'm really excited to do it. And I will link this down below for you. It actually comes in 3 different sizes. I'm going to do the medium. What like I said, I have never done this before, but I saw a video on it. Um, and what I liked about it was the lining is cut a little bit smaller than the exterior. And a lot of times, I don't know if you make pouches and the lining just doesn't quite fit. And they also had a unique way to put in the zipper. And so like I said, I'm going to leave that link down below for you. It is a downloadable pattern. And it was quite inexpensive, like I said, and it comes in 3 different sizes. And boy, I tell you, if it works out great, I mean, if it's a neat little pouch that I can use, I'm gonna pass it on. So I'm gonna go first of all start with the quilting, and then I'm gonna cut out the exterior. For the lining, I think I'm gonna use just this. It's a really pretty floral cotton, blue flowers. It has a vintage sort of look to it, and that's why I've chosen it. Another thing I've been experimenting with is I made this adorable little flower rosette. I didn't, I just used a strip of this silk and I put a basting thread in it, and then just pulled it and then just zigzag the center of it. I thought I'm going to add that to the front. And she also gave me the sleeves. And it has, look how cute this is. But anyway, it has some little flowers. Yeah, I thought maybe I would just add something like this. It has a little itty bitty pearls, maybe to the center of this little rosette. So that's what I'm going to work on. I'm going to take it to my sewing machine, and I am going to do the quilting on this. I am going to use my walking foot to do the quilting, just to make sure everything feeds the way it should. And then I'll come back and we'll cut out using the pattern to cut this out. I've got my quilted lines done. Now I'm going to cut my pieces out. And there are 2 pieces of the exterior cut on the fold and 2 pieces of the lining cut on the fold. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. One thing to notice is there is a slight flare, and there is a purpose for that. So make sure you're cutting it out if you follow along with this pattern the way right on the cutting line. I've got my pieces cut out, and I have a zipper here. This is a continuous zipper, and I've put the zipper pull on already. I always cut mine a little bit longer, just because I'm not very exact about getting these on, and it just works better for me. And then I'm just going to use a clip right here so this doesn't go off the end. The first thing they have you do is to mark this, put a couple marks on this. And one of them is 1 inch in and 3/8 of an inch down on each side. And also I'm gonna mark it on the lining too. Again, 3/8 of an inch down and 1 inch in. Also, for the lining piece, they have you mark 1 inch in and 3/8 of an inch on each of these little pieces too, just like a little, almost like a little rectangle. This is my heat erase pen that I'm working on. So it's going to look like this, and I'm going to mark that on all my lining pieces and then mark in on my other pieces. And then I think I'm going to put this on right away. I'm going to just add it to the front, and then I'm going to add a little bead in there too. Yeah, I'm going to stick that on there. Get my other markings on, and then it's on to getting the zipper put in. I've got the rosette on. I've marked my zipper center by putting a little notch on it, and also the center of my fronts and my lining. And now I'm going to make my sandwich. Just going to do some clipping here. I'm clipping the center fronts. This mark that we put the 1 inch in, that is where you want to start your stitching when you stitch in the zipper, and then you want to end at this one. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to finish clipping these, and then I'm going to take this to my sewing machine and sew my sandwich. And when you do this, your zipper is face down and the zipper pull is on the left hand side. I'm going to just stitch 1/4 of an inch on this all the way down. Got my zipper part in, and now I'm going to top stitch this, or edge stitch it right next to the zipper, making sure this is all smoothed away and laying flat. And when you do that, you also start and stop at that same spot. So I'm going to start there and I'm going to end here with my top stitching. And then I'm going to do the other side, make my sandwich, and join the other side of my zipper. My zipper is in and the top stitching is in. Then the next thing they have you do is to sew up the side seams. You put the lining on one side and you just move this zipper out of the way. And you're going to want to stitch from all the way up, taking a 3/8 inch seam allowance. And you want to make sure to follow this slight curve that I made a mention of when we were cutting out. So that's going to be on the lining side. And then on the lining bottom, we are going to leave this open between these two little rectangles that we drew on. And so what you want to do is, this is going to be your stitching line for the 3/8 inch. You take it from here down and from here to here. Leave open the notched corners and then stitch up the side seam. And again, making sure that zipper is out of the way. So I'm going to pin this the same for the outer. You want to get that zipper out of the way, and then you're going to pin and take a 3/8 inch seam allowance, 3/8 inch seam allowance across the bottom, and then also up the other side. I do want to make a mention too that at this point I'm going to get my zipper pull in the center. After the sides and bottom are sewn, lining is done, and I sew that little rectangle, and this part is open for the turning. Now for this, they actually explain how to box your corners on your zipper. So not only is there's going to be a box corner at the bottom, but also this. And how they explain to do it is you just pinch your seam and open it up. And same with the lining, open it up and open the seam, pinch it, I'm going to stick a clip in this. And how they want you to do it is you don't sew all the way across this. You just stitch right on that seam allowance, 3/8 of an inch down from the top. So I'm going to actually mark that and then take it to my sewing machine and stitch that. And then you're also going to do the same on the other side of the zipper. And now to box the corners, I'm just going to stagger the seams on this, putting one direction and the other direction, and then sew across. I'm going to do the same on the other side and also the lining. And stitch across it. And now for these zippers too, I've got this extra end on here. I'm just going to trim that off. Turning it right side out. I really do like the boxed look on the zipper. I really do like that look. Just have to close my little lining. And I'm thinking that's why they want you to do that extra little step when we did that little rectangle stitching down here. It'll be easier to line this up, fold it, and stitch it. This is my finished little bag. I really love, again, these zippered corners. I do have some of my markings that I need to get off of there yet, but the inside lining just really fits well too. It doesn't have that gapey. Sometimes there's just extra fabric in there. And the pattern is great for that. Again, we'll be linking that pattern down below for you. It's going to take you to her website and you can purchase it there. It's, like I said, it's really quite inexpensive. I think it was under $10. And it has really good instructions and really good pictures. So if you can't quite follow along with me, you can use the instructions. But it comes in 3 sizes. And again, this is the middle size. One more thing I thought that would be fun to do is to add a bow on this with some of the satin. I did cut a shape. I just folded it twice and then just freehand cut this bow out. When you do this, you just want to have quite a bit of space in here because that's where you're going to be tying a knot. So I'm going to cut 2 of these shapes out and then just take a 1/4 inch seam allowance around, leaving a little opening so that I can turn it. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to cut it and sew it, and then I'll show you how I'm going to put it onto the little bag. Here's what my bowl looks like. I just finished that little opening with some machine stitching. Then I'm going to just see if I can get it through this zipper pull hole. And then just tie it once. That's what it looks like. It's just going to hang on the end of that. Bye everyone. There will be more pictures at the end. I got 3 completely different bags and clutches, pouches done this week. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you have a chance to create this week. Bye for now.